Yes, I did. And in fact, I joined 56 senior former foreign policy officials in writing him a letter urging that he withdraw. He's been a very successful American president. He's also a wonderful human being whom I've known for almost 50 years. We've worked together in the Balkans when I was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and above all on matters of supporting the Kurds. But it was clear that he was not going to be able to win this election. And it would be a disaster to have Donald Trump, who doesn't believe in the principles of democracy, who wants to sacrifice Ukraine to Putin, who will withdraw from NATO, who will betray the Kurds in Rojava, to have him as president. And so Biden did what was the best interest of America and the best interest of the world by withdrawing. And I admire him for doing that. Well, it was clear that the American people had doubts about electing somebody who was 81 years old. And the debate in June magnified that because his performance was the performance of a very old man. And he came to recognize that, and that his legacy is going to be one very successful term and not being the man who lost to Donald Trump. And he's reframed the presidential election. Now we're going to have a young candidate, the Vice President Kamala Harris, against another very old man. Donald Trump is the oldest person ever nominated to run for president of the United States. And his age was completely apparent at the Republican convention, where he gave the longest acceptance speech ever recorded for a nominee in American political history. It was a speech like Castro, and it meandered, it made no sense. It was a speech of an old man who's really not fit for the job, who also happens to be a convicted felon and somebody who's been judged in court to be a rapist. Well, first, if you're a candidate for president, and you of course are always going to say you're going to run until the moment you say you are not. So that was completely normal. Um, as to uh, as to his reasons, um, it's not that he cared about him losing; he cared about the country. He sees Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy. This is a man who doesn't believe in the basic principle of democracy, which is when you lose an election, you accept the result. And Donald Trump lost in 2020 by 7 million votes, and yet he wouldn't accept the result. He's promised to be a dictator, becomes president. So, this is why Biden stepped aside, because he wanted to be sure that there was going to be somebody in the president's office who believed in democracy, and he recognized that he couldn't win. Well, the biggest concern that the polls showed about Biden was his age, and the belief that he was too old to be president at age 81. Again, Trump is 78, so he's almost the same age, and he shows signs of cognitive decline, which you could see in his acceptance speeches. He wandered all over the place. But in terms of policies, I actually don't think the American people support Donald Trump's policies. One of Donald Trump's policies is that the only valid election is an election he wins. Well, that's not how democracy works. Uh, I myself am a candidate for office. I won twice and lost once. I accept the election I lost, and that's just how anybody should behave in a democracy. He says he's going to be a dictator. He's going to eliminate Americans. Uh, so these are the things that Donald Trump stands for. He ran a terrible economy. We now have a successful economy with Vice President Harris, the uh, Democrats keep Trump out of the Oval Office.
Was wrong.
If the question is for me, no. I think he did the right thing. It was clear that he would not win the election, and it was time to pass it on to somebody younger. I've known Joe Biden for more than 40 years, and he's had a very distinguished career and as a senator, as vice president. He's been an effective president, but it's obvious that at 81 he wasn't as effective as he had been, and so the torch has been passed to a younger person, Vice President Harris. By contrast with Donald Trump, you have the oldest person ever nominated to be president of the United States. His acceptance speech was the meandering speech of a very old man. It was the longest acceptance speech in American political history, full of grievances, full of lies, like the claim that he had won the 2020 election, one he had lost. He's, of course, a convicted felon, 34 counts, has 3 more criminal cases. He's been adjudged in court a rapist. And so when the attention shifts from President Biden's age, and the American people have been clear that they think he's too old, they also think Trump's too old, to Trump's record, which is where the Democrats want the race to be, I think the prospects for the Democratic candidate are going to be good. And President Biden recognized that, and in the interest of the country, he stepped aside. Sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm saying that because none of the other candidates that you mentioned are actually running. Gavin Newsom has endorsed Kamala Harris. Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who would have been a very strong candidate, might have been a personal choice of mine. She's endorsed Kamala Harris. Governor Shapiro has endorsed Kamala Harris. So, in fact, she's the only candidate running, and it's almost certain that she will be the Democratic nominee in a week or two when they have the virtual roll call vote. So we know what the election is going to be. It will be between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And there'll be major differences. Donald Trump, particularly foreign policy. For example, he wants to stop supporting Ukraine. Speaker Johnson in the House of Representatives, stop supporting Ukraine. He wants to pull out of NATO. He has said that Russia can do what, but they're his.
Yes, you will. But
Well, yes, I would think they made a mistake, but unlike Donald Trump, I accept the results of elections even if I don't like the results. Unlike I don't think Mr. Waltz has ever been elected to anything, but I have elected twice in my post-diplomat career and lost an election. And I didn't scream, "Oh, it was stolen from me. They cheated." No, I accepted the results. That's what you do in a democracy. That's what Secretary Clinton, it's what Al Gore did. Well, I mean, that's as inventive as your
Mr. Walls,
conspiracy
thank
theories
you
about
for
the
the election. Here.
look,
Go ahead,
we could discuss. There was we heard from him a pile of conspiracy theories, the Supreme Secret Service in league, and the shooting in Pennsylvania, CNN, in on the conspiracy to shoot. And there's just nonsense also about the Supreme Court. The truth is that the Republicans have packed the Supreme Court over the years, and it's come up with a lot of extremist decisions. One, that a president is completely immune from any criminal liability for anything he does. It goes against the basic principle of American democracy, which is we don't have a king. The president is accountable. But that's not productive. Let's discuss Donald Trump and what he would do as president. He has clearly stated that if countries don't pay up, Russia can do whatever they want. It's a blank check for Russia to not just invade Ukraine, but to attack NATO. He wants to get rid of NATO. He has opposed aid to Ukraine. And what about Kurds? He is the fellow who betrayed the Syrian Kurds in 2018. It led his defense secretary to resign. If he comes back, boy, those folks in northeast Syria who were key to the defeat of the Islamic State, they are going to be betrayed again. It will be a blank check to the Turkish President Erdogan. So these are the real world consequences, and not just, but well, obviously this is campaign rhetoric. It isn't something that will really happen. And anyhow, what damages are we talking about? The economy is far better off now than it was when Trump was president. The threat to democracy is gone from a guy who refuses to accept an indisputably free and fair election and basically tried to get the vice president to overthrow American democracy by keeping Trump in office in an election that he had lost. And no doubt if he gets in again, he will do everything in his power to subvert elections. He has said he will only accept the results of this election if he wins. Well, that's just not how democracy works. And he is an existential threat. Look at his incompetence in handling the COVID situation. He got up there and told Americans that they should inject themselves with household bleach, something that well, he doesn't believe in democracy. The only thing he believes in is what's good for Donald Trump. It's very interesting what's happened to the Republican Party. It used to be the party of family values. It used to be the party of fiscal responsibility, and it used to be the party of national security. And under Trump, it's become the party of Russia. It's become the party of record deficits. Trump had the biggest deficit of any president in his 4-year term in office. Incidentally, he had Republican control of Congress for the first couple of years. Like a judge with a Sworn Act. Well, one only has to look at the record. In Afghanistan, where I served, Trump negotiated a surrender deal, and it led to the withdrawal and the collapse of the Afghan government on NATO. And I quote him, he said, if other countries don't pay, he will encourage Russia to do whatever in the hell they want. Those are his words. That means they can invade. They can do whatever in the hell they want. That's his attitude toward NATO. He's against helping Ukraine. I mean, I would call all of that weakness, which is why so much of the world, except for Putin, except for Erdogan, except for Assad, except for MBS in Saudi Arabia, and except for Netanyahu, all the rest of the world doesn't want to see Donald Trump back in the Oval Office because he's a guy who doesn't stand up for America, doesn't stand up for alliances, tells Putin he can do whatever in the hell he wants. And those aren't my words. Those are Donald Trump's words about NATO. So, the thing speaks for itself. In the case of Israel, his message to the Israeli government is go ahead and finish the job without regard to the humanitarian consequences. You know, I don't know how that plays in the Middle East, but probably not well. Oh, well, maybe he'll just wave his magic wand, or maybe he'll get Stormy Daniels, the porn star, to do it for him. This is all fiction. He can't do it in a single phone call. You know, the world is a complicated place. Diplomacy is a complicated business, and you know, no president gets exactly what they want, and it requires hard work, skill, sensible policies. You know, working with your NATO allies, not telling the enemy that they can come and do whatever they want. Sure, not all the NATO allies have spent 2% on their defense. Is that really an excuse to say Russia come in and take 5%? Well, obviously, I hope it will be Vice President Kamala Harris, who is not going to be the Democratic nominee because she's a woman or a person of color, but because she is the top Democrat in the United States. She's the Vice President of the United States. That's what I hope will happen. But I've been in this business long enough not to substitute hope for what I think will happen. I taught at the National War College, and we had a slogan there: hope is not a strategy. So I hope she will prevail. I think it will be a disaster if she doesn't. I think there's a very good chance she will, because it's a race between a person, a younger person with a part of an administration with a very good, against a 70-year-old guy who is showing signs of dementia and senility, which were so apparent. 90-minute